Okay, we are live, baby, but we're letting it breathe just for a couple of beats because we like to have everybody in the house. We like to have all of the tribe under the same roof before we officially kick off. It looks like we're good. So, welcome in, everybody. It is the Huddle Up Podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle and powered by Blue Wire Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is Scott Kennedy, the producer in chief and co host of the Broncos for Breakfast morning show podcast, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Scott, back to back. Zach's getting over a little case of the sniffles. He's going to be okay. We've talked to him today. He's hanging in there. But bro, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We had our first show together, just me and you yesterday, and it was so nice. We decided to do it twice. So, but you know what? I am a little offended. You always introduce Zach as you know him, you love him, and I'm not nearly as lovable as Zach. So you don't want to assume, you don't want to make those kind of assumptions because I'm much more rough around the edges than the cuddly bearded Zach, who is definitely lovable.
I don't know. I think both of you can be pretty fierce at times, but
No, I agree. We share. We're very similar in our passion. You get us going.
Yep.
We're very passionate. We're very similar that way.
You trigger Scott or Zach and just get ready to sit back and be entertained. Grab some popcorn, get a sody pop, and it's going to be fun. But we got some fish to fry here, Scott. The Denver Broncos. Let me pull up this article that Zach wrote today. Of course, as I mentioned, he's doing okay. He was well enough to work today, so God bless him. The Broncos have hired Temple co-DC Ola Adams to be the assistant secondary coach behind Christian Parker, a.k.a. CP, who is one of the small handful of Fangio holdovers that Nathaniel Hackett has kept around. So this is from Zach's article today. Quote, continuing to renovate their suddenly youthful staff, the Denver Broncos are set to hire, in quotes, Temple co-defensive coordinator Ola Adams as assistant secondary coach. And this is coming from ESPN's Pete Thamel. And a couple of quick things here, Scott, then I want to get your take on this. Adams joined Temple, the program, in January after spending 7 seasons at Villanova, the last 3 as defensive coordinator, secondary coach, previously served as the school's cornerbacks coach / special teams coordinator and running backs coach. So he's been in the at the college level for the last handful of years. Scott, I don't know how much that matters to you, but your take on this cat coming in to basically assist Christian Parker to coach up this young defensive secondary.
All right. Well, I don't know this one personally, but I've told you before, when you start looking at college coaches, I actually like the coaches below the top level because they actually have to coach. I don't care about the wide receivers coach at LSU. I don't. He's recruiting his way to the top. Those guys it's kind of the same thing as like, do I want the offensive coordinator from Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers? Maybe, maybe not. But when you're looking at guys that can actually coach and develop, start looking at some of the smaller teams where they're not out-talenting every single person out there. You go to Villanova, you go to Temple, by God, if you're going to be successful, you better know how to coach because you're not out recruiting a lot of the teams that you're playing against. So I like the strategy, and I'll be very interested to see him. I'm not surprised that he's making a move because you've heard me say before, Chad, that anything doesn't necessarily work out, especially when you're talking about co-coordinators.
Right.
Someone's got to be in charge. So very interested in seeing him come up. But I like the resume. I like the results he's gotten at a place that you can't just do it with personnel.
Well said, my friend. The Broncos also let a couple of longtime assistant coaches depart. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, what an incestuous relationship this has become between Denver and Minnesota. I mean, the George Payton stuff notwithstanding, or I guess perhaps that being the source of how this whole thing is beginning to, gel together. But the Denver Broncos, we had heard reports over the weekend, they're not bringing back Ed Donatel, the defensive coordinator under Vic Fangio, basically in name only. He was more of the senior secondary coach. He did do a lot for Vic. I don't want to minimize him, but he wasn't the play caller. Last time Ed Donatel called plays in the league was in 2008 in Washington as a defensive coordinator. Well, Kevin O'Connell, one of 3 finalists for the Broncos head coach job, hired by the Vikings to be the head coach liked Ed Donatel, hired him as defensive coordinator, but it doesn't end there. So 31 years of coaching experience, Scott, out the door to Minnesota by way of Ed Donatel. And then Chris Cooper, former Denver Broncos 5th-round pick, Pro Bowl caliber right guard. He was on the Super Bowl 48 team and starting lineup. He's been the assistant O-line coach to Mike Munchak. This dude was literally drafted, Scott, by Mike Shanahan to play right guard in a zone blocking scheme, wide zone, that whole thing. He's coached it. He's seen it. He's played it. Didn't jive with Nathaniel Hackett. For whatever reason, he went out for that Butch Berry from San Francisco, and Chris Cooper's gone. But here's the good news. This is what's good for Chris. Upward mobility, baby. He went from being an assistant position coach to now he is the Vikings official O-line coach. But how much of that talent or coaching wherewithal, I should say, coaching experience going out the door, how much does that concern you for what is now a very young coached and very young personnel Broncos squad?
Yeah, we've talked about this. I think Carl and I both hit on it on Tuesday on Broncos for Breakfast. Then he brought it up on Building the Broncos later that night. Just that, it's nice to go. We needed to go younger on this staff. We needed to go younger. We needed to go some fresh ideas. But as the pendulum swung a little too far to one way or the other. But I'm not surprised when any coaches are dismissed by the new guy coming in at all. It's more of a surprise to me, honestly, when they're kept. I mean, all the way down to director of the scouting, the front office people. When there's a regime change, people like to bring in folks that they're a little more familiar with. And Lawrence coming in with some stars saying, it looks like the Vikings are striking back at Peyton. Maybe not. Who better than to place a call and give a recommendation? Say, hey, we're not keeping this guy. You'll love him. I think it's probably more like that as far as a recommendation from a general manager to, it's a relationship business to make a call. If George Payton didn't want that guy, didn't like him, he probably wouldn't have. I would almost guarantee you he gave him a recommendation for that position.
Guys, we teased it. I want to come back to this. We teased it, and Lawrence, appreciate you, big dog. Here's the update for the month of February for the Super Chat rankings.
We're just a shade behind on this one. But the top 5, the one that may have changed is D-Dub is probably 2. I would almost be positive Michaela Parker is up to 3. Michaela's up to 3.
So those first 4, though, in terms of being in the top 5, we're confident. Corey H, let's see who might be behind him. Sam Bam's made some moves, but that's a pretty close approximation of where everybody's at. Tonight, this doesn't count, and I think last night numbers don't count to this, but that gives you an update, all right? And then one last thing, we'll dive right back into the topics for this evening. We want to let everybody know where things stand on the Facebook goal of trying to reach 250,000 stars in the month of February. When we reach that goal, we are going to raffle off a Broncos jersey of the winner's choosing. And here's where that stands 10 days or so, 9 full days. We're in the 10th day. We're at 33% complete. All right. So we got a little bit of ground to make up. The only people in the running for that raffle for the jersey are those who contribute to the goal. Here's who would have the most tickets in the hat, as it were, if it ended today. That would be Mike Ronquillo at the top, legend. Mark Schrader, who's been throwing down on the morning shows. Jacob Foster, Rodney Garcia, legendary, consistent, both guys. Joshua Mize, Miguel, Travis Tarbucks, Lawrence Rivera, Andrew Baker, and Pete Middleton round out the top 10. And then all these names are also going to have plenty of tickets in the hat. So much love and respect. Appreciate you guys. We just wanted to give you an update on that. Bryce, great to see you, my friend, in the chat. Thank you for the super. Thank you for the conversations also, by the way, on Twitter, @me, @Zach, keeping us apprised. Hey, did you guys catch this Bronco development? What's your take? Always appreciated. He says, Antonio Brown wants to buy the Broncos. Thoughts? What do you suppose his net worth is, Scott?
What do you get paid this year? What was his contract this year? Divide that in half. It's probably about that. So if he was on $15 million, he's probably got a net worth of about $7 million. My guess is he doesn't have a whole lot of appreciable assets in his name moving around. You don't invest in real estate and that type of thing. Hopefully he's socked some of the signing bonuses away and put them away because he's earned enough to live on for the rest of his life. But
Well, here's what the the kind of paparazzi celebrity net worth sites out there
and
that there's.
Chad, all they do when they do those usually is add up earnings. They don't ever talk about
Well,
investments.
but one thing, you're right,
Mhm.
but one thing it mentions here is that he's earned 77 million in the league, but that his net worth is 20 million according to celebritynetworth.com. So, guys, not very wise with this coin, dude.
Well, think about that though. Depending on where you're playing, you're going to have, a marginal tax rate of 60%.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
he might not take much more home than 30 of that money, depending on where he's playing.
That's why, dude, if I was a player bringing in millions of dollars, hey, you get drafted where you get drafted. But as soon as I become a free agent, I'm willing to take a modest discount if I can go play in Miami or Jacksonville.
Shoot, Vegas wouldn't be a bad spot now.
Vegas too. Yep,
Yeah,
Vegas too. And
Vegas wouldn't be a bad spot. And
looking out for number one, right? You got to dispense with the team you grew up rooting for stuff. Taxes, man, brutal.
And Chad, I want
Brutal.
to hit on this real quick so we
Yeah.
can get it over with. Albert, appreciate you asking. What happened to my eye? You notice I'm wearing. I've been wearing a hat the last few days. You've never seen me a hat before or glasses. Somehow I picked up an eye infection. They call it periorbital cellulitis, I think is what it is. I just started antibiotics yesterday, but basically it looks like I got socked in the eye. And it feels like that too, except if I had done that, I would know when it was starting to feel better. This has been going on almost a week.
Yeah.
And it's
Tomorrow's a week, right?
It hasn't been great, but I feel okay. Tylenol wipes it out. So, but yeah, it looks a little funky. So I'm going with a little bit of shadow and a little bit of glasses and trying to keep the topic so that you're not just going, looking at this crazy, lazy-eyed dude up here.
Truth
I
is,
appreciate you asking.
but
It does. It looks like I got socked.
When he was at the Senior Bowl, someone said, "Hey, MHH sucks," and he went, "Kaboom, bam, boom, boom." And
Well, Nick said that all it took was watching 2 days of these quarterbacks to get an eye infection.
That's good. I like that.
He goes, "We're gonna have to lean into this one." I'm like, 2 days, and you're already gouging your eyes out. That's how bad the quarterback class is. But appreciate you asking for sure.
On that same beat with Albert, he says, "I'm really excited with the new coaching staff and the new scheme. I think we are a playoff contender again, even with Drew as a quarterback." Now, one of our great supporters, paying subscriber on Facebook, close friend of mine in the show and the site and everything, Albert, I love you. Do you agree with that sentiment? We kind of mined the Drew Lock upside potential topic yesterday, but we're here. People are talking about it. People are wondering.
Mhm.
Do you see that as a possibility? Very pragmatic is Scott as an analyst, and you need that as a balance. I think we're playoff contenders again, even with Drew as a quarterback, Scott. Agree or disagree?
Yes, I agree. You weren't that far off this year. It ended up going south 7-10. Alana, thank you for the stars. We appreciate that. Speaking of new folks coming in and new friends, at least, to me, to that I recognize as far as new to Mile High Huddle and friends of the show, the support that you've shown over the last month has been just spectacular. So thank you so much. But yeah, you weren't that far off. Excuse me. Now, what we saw last year out of Drew was he came in and looked unprepared. Comes in whenever he showed up as a spot, not even a spot starter, but coming in relief when Teddy was getting hurt. He looked very poor, looked bad. And then when he came in for the last 3 starts, it looked like your only job is to not screw this up.
Right.
And he just played hesitant, So letting him play free, can he do enough good things? Can he Jameis Winston this team where let the kid throw for 38 touchdowns and 20 interceptions? Maybe that is a possibility. But yeah, this team is good enough around it that if he plays serviceably, it's a playoff team. I agree with that, especially you got a ton of money in free agency because if you don't get your quarterback, you got a ton of money to put around him. You got a ton of money. Go get your right tackle. Go get 2 new edge rushers. Go get a fire-breathing safety. Go get another interior lineman. You've got the money to do that. I got what, 40 million? You drop me, if I got 40 million, give me 5 or 6 $8 million players and put them on this roster. Yeah, we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, Broncos are estimated to have, according to Over the Cap, let's see, cap space is 38. So yeah, you're right, just around 40 million.
And that's before any restructures or extensions or
Exactly.
waves or anything like that.
But at a certain point, on the topic of Drew and can lead this team as is with this coaching staff to the playoffs, like at a certain point, do you trust the hire that you made? And especially it being an offensive-minded head coach who's going to be calling the plays, coming from a prolific offense in Green Bay, albeit quarterbacked by a future Hall of Famer. If you trust that that was the right hire, then why wouldn't you at least be open to the possibility that if the job devolves back to Drew Lock for whatever reason in 2022, you have a better shot to swing for the fences with this guy coaching, pulling the strings than you would with Pat Shurmur / Vic Fangio. Kevin, thank you for the very generous super chat. What's up? He says to Broncos country, and the same for Casey Nickel. Casey is going to be on the show Wednesday next week. We're kicking back off our superstar segments. Casey would be a debut for Casey on the show, so we can't wait for that, big dog. Thank you guys. But, do you trust that you made the right hire, Scott? And if you did, then you got to also lean into that and kind of trust that Hackett might be able to tap into something, having Drew's back, believing in him. They both kind of have that goofy, enthusiastic kind of childlike joy for what they do. I think they could maybe hit it off, but I want to caveat this. I don't believe Drew Lock is the Peyton Hackett plan A for 2022. So
yeah, I don't think so either. I think a veteran quarterback is plan A for sure. Now, which one is it? Might be A, B, and C. So, one of the frequent things I hear you say on the MHH is if you had gone with Drew, at least you would have known. At least you would have known what you had. What you don't ever address, at least publicly, is the administration and George Payton don't have anything to prove to you. Maybe they already know.
Yeah, they might have.
They may already know. Maybe George Payton says, "I know, and this isn't it." That's a very distinct possibility too. So there might be zero chance he's a Denver Broncos starter next year. I don't know. I think we got the question this morning. If you had to choose, who would it be? And I said the leader for me right now would be Drew Lock because he only one under the contract. I think it's probably like 33% Drew, 66% not Drew, which puts him as the leader because there isn't anybody else I'd say has a better chance than a third to be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback next year. And that's what's going to be so intriguing about this offseason until a move is made to get in a bona fide veteran quarterback. Then even if you go and draft a guy at number 9, there's no guarantee he's the starter next year at all. In fact, I probably wouldn't want him to be a starter next year. I'd let it be Drew Lock. Use up 1 year of his contract left. The problem is you've got a bunch of veterans on that team that might not be down with that. They are like, listen, we're here to win now. We Patrick Sutton, we re-signed. We want to win now, and maybe we don't believe in this guy. So a veteran is plan A for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing is, look, you're right. George Payton could have, rolled in here, said the nice coach GM speak things about Drew Lock when he took the job. And he did say some good things about Drew. Wasn't, didn't make any kind of commitments to Drew, but said a lot of nice things. He's got all the tools you look for, Maybe through the course of OTAs and training camp, and by the time he gets vanquished by Teddy, maybe George Payton, it's possible, was like, you know what, I've seen what I need to see. Drew, look, we'll keep him on the roster because we got him for one more year. He's got starting experience, but
he's cheap.
Here's the thing that I think pokes a hole. By the way, thank you, Joshua. It's good to see you, big dog. Appreciate it.
Big stars from Josh.
Is George Payton said that one of the key questions that he was talking to these head coaches about, right, was what would your plan be for Drew? So if you already moved on from Drew as a possibility, I don't know that you even mentioned that. Now, granted, Scott, it was asked to him, where does Drew fit in? So it's not like he was out there saying, now listen up, everybody. I want everyone to understand Drew Lock is a topic. And, he was asked specifically about Drew, but he decided to take that angle.
All right, see, here's Chad. Here's the thing that always drives me crazy in the background when you bring this up, because you say it a lot. One, at least you put it on there, was he was asked specifically about Drew Lock. And in this interview, he says, yeah, that's going to be a big key. Any quarterback, any possible head coach, we're going to sit down and say, what is your plan for Drew Lock? And then he went on and said, we're also going to ask them what their plan is for guys in the draft. Who are you looking at in the draft? We're also going to say, what about free agency? What about veteran quarterbacks that we could trade for? I said, so the fact that he was asked about Drew Lock and then he talked about every single possibility at quarterback, he didn't say anything. He said nothing. So going on and saying, that was a key question. That was a key comment about Drew Lock. No, it wasn't, because he mentioned every single possibility when asked about Drew Lock. So by saying everything, he said nothing about Drew Lock.
So here's
That's
the
what
full,
I read into it.
Here's the full quote.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me read it for everybody who's not with us live. No doubt. So the question was, does Drew fit in to your plan in 2022? No doubt, definitely. How Drew did this year and kind of how he evolved. We want every candidate to have an opinion on Drew. How are you going to get the best out of Drew? Do they have a knowledge? And then as you bring up, now he switches gears. Do they have a knowledge of the college quarterbacks? Do you have knowledge of the free agent quarterbacks? Who have you been around? What's your ideal quarterback? What type of philosophy are you going to run on offense? It's a big conversation when you're interviewing these guys. It can go 5 to 7 hours, and quarterback is obviously a big part of the conversation. Now, the one thing that I think makes this a little bit more when he asserts Drew as a part of these interviews, all right, one of many questions, obviously, that are key when you're interviewing a candidate. It's not like this was the only
specifically about Drew Lock.
This isn't the only thing you're talking about, but this right here, Scott. Is he a part of 2022? Now, Peyton could say that with a perfectly straight face because he goes, yeah, he's under contract. No doubt. Definitely he's part of 2022. And be like, you know what? He's not my option to start. But the tonality, sometimes it's also not every word they say. It's not what you say. Sometimes too, Scott, it's how you say things. And just the way he led with that. If you guys go back, I think it might be linked here. I think we linked it in the article to it's right here. There's a link to the actual episode. You can go back and check it out. I don't think George Payton has given up on Drew Lock as a possibility. Now, again, guys, I'm not sitting here saying he's plan A, right?
Not as a possibility. I don't read into that quote nearly as much as you have. I read into it as that's the general manager talking, and he hit on basically every possibility at quarterback.
Travis Weber in the house. What's going on, big dog? You've got, by the way, I put in an order for your T-shirt. The specific thing we needed that we were emailing back and forth about came available finally through the merch store, so it's on its way to you. Appreciate you, buddy. He says, I hope you get well, Scott. Hope you get well. So who did Minnesota take from us? Hopefully you saw that by now. They took Ed Donatel and Chris Cooper. Okay. Travis Tarbox, your Prince.
Joshua coming back in. You should see the other guy. Well, my son, who is 12 years old, and he's getting to be about my size at 12, he plays a bunch of sports, so his hands are always getting beat up. So he's like walking around rubbing the scrapes on his knuckles, saying, that'll teach the old man to mouth off to me again.
That's right. Thank you for the reminder on this, Bryce. Curtis Motkins, who is a very treasured running backs coach that's gotten a lot of production out of that position for Denver, he also took a job in Minnesota. And that's something that, another guy that Nathaniel Hackett could have, kept around if he wanted to, but he didn't. Kind of curious. I mean, Curtis Motkins, Scott, for what it's worth, he's a guy who's been a coordinator in the league. He was considered for I'm trying to remember the school now, but he was interviewed for one of the head coaching gigs in D1 football. I wonder what it was about Curtis Motkins that maybe Curtis didn't really want to stay. I don't know, but
that's always a possibility too. We've said that about Drew. Drew's under contract for 1 year. People automatically assume that it's a long-term option if he's successful. Well, he could be okay, and then you got to make a decision because he's not under contract. It takes two to tango on this. I made that joke behind the scenes when we were talking about Derek Carr. Derek Carr, and say, would McDaniels really give away another quarterback and really tank them like that? I'm like, you know what? Derek Carr probably said, I want out of here.
Yeah, indeed. Leroy, appreciate the love, my friend. And he's digging the breakfast show on a day off today, saying our team is already better and the season hasn't even started yet. Can't wait till it does get started. Amen to that. Appreciate you tuning in this morning.
Yeah, Travis wants. We went for about 90 minutes this morning, and we could have gone longer. It was it was a fun time this morning. Appreciate you joining us.
I was wondering why that MP3 file took so long to buffer once I uploaded it to the RSS. I'm like, dude,
we went 90 minutes this morning, and we didn't even hit on a lot of the stuff we were planning on talking about because we had fun. We were having fun. So Nick and I have a good time doing that. Travis, thank you for coming back with the Stars again. And when does the new league year start? I know it's March, just not the date. I haven't paid that close attention to it, Chad. Do you know?
Yeah, it's March. March 16th, 2 p.m. Mountain. So that's when free agency begins in earnest. Guys, there's the legal tampering period that'll predate that by, is it 24 or 48? Either one. Day or two before you could start negotiating and contacting these guys. Terry up in Canada, been with us a long, long time. About to get hitched. We saw pictures of that ring, that rock that you got for the missus to be. Congrats to you, my friend. Hope everything continues to go excellent with that. He says he still has faith in Drew Lock. Hashtag state of being. And you are one of the great members of our community, Terry, that exemplifies that hashtag.
Yeah, and absolutely. He seems, for all reasons, someone that's pretty easy to root for. I'd love to. The easiest thing in the world would be if he's successful. If Drew Lock ends up being the guy, and if he turns into the man. Oh, I know what point I wanted to bring up yesterday is the third point is I kind of forgot about this as I was going on about Drew is there's a lot of discussion about, okay, this is a very similar curve for guys in their third year, right? So the third year, and it takes guys 3 years. Look at this quarterback. Look at Josh Palmer. Look at John Elway. Look at Peyton Manning. What we don't say in that situation is most of the guys don't make it to their third year. They wash out before that. Most of them do.
Right.
So does he become the guy who just wasn't good enough and didn't make it? Or does he become the guy who has the ability to move past that and say, yeah, he needed some time. Now look at him. That'd be great because he's, cost controlled. You could surround him with a bunch of players, one of your own. That would be the best scenario for the Denver Broncos is for Drew Lock, who's already under contract, to become the guy. But it's a big leap right now.
Yeah, it's a big if. But you know what? I think for that to really happen for Drew and for the Broncos, it will take the right coaching system, that right support staff on the coaching side of things. We go back to the comment Nathaniel Hackett meant, generally speaking, about, hey, the quarterbacks that I've worked with, they know that I'm going to have their back and they know that I'm going to put them in the best position possible to succeed. And you look at that through a Drew Lock lens. Drew hasn't really had coaches that have, at least from a public, it's not just what they say. Look at what they do. His back since arguably Rich Scangarello. So if they end up making some coach QB love and they freaking really hit it off and whatever, that doesn't work out getting A-Rod, doesn't work out getting this guy, they decide they don't like this class and let's go in our honeymoon year. Let's go ahead and run this thing out with Drew on his rookie deal. That's the only shot I think that you have of Drew Lock really turning the corner is Nathaniel Hackett just being that perfect coach that arrived at the perfect time and all the stars, everything else lining up. Because otherwise, as much as I like Drew Lock, he's had his opportunities. People act like he hasn't had a shot, and even though there's been arguably some unfair stuff that's happened for him and a lot of which no one could control, like the pandemic and all that stuff, he had his window of time, Scott, to prove he could be the guy. And a lot of quarterbacks, in fact, most quarterbacks who come into the league, they don't get that opportunity to just say, hey, you're the man, go do this.
What I've said is, you really couldn't have handpicked anybody better for him to come and play under, except maybe if he goes to New Orleans and he plays, plug him into Sean Payton. Well, that's not even possible anymore. What I've said is with Nathaniel Hackett coming in with this energy and the ability that, an offensive guy and the fun, he's almost a little goofy, he's fun. He's not going to, you don't feel like the guys are going to be out there playing scared. They're going to play free, which is what you want. That's what you want out of your coach, to get the guys who want to play for you. I think man management, the most important job you have. That if Drew Lock doesn't take that level, that next step, this conversation about Drew Lock is done. Done.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see for sure.
It'll come out in the wash. Dylan, the great MHH moderator, I want your take on this, Scott, because you had an up-close look at Malik Willis, who, the Liberty quarterback, the questions about him kind of revolve around either level of competition, right, at Liberty, and how raw is he? Is he polished enough yet to really be worth a first-round pick? But Dylan says, if we take any of the quarterbacks this year, I want it to be Willis. What is your evaluation, Cliff Notes version on Malik Willis?
My concern on Willis right now is to get Willis, because of the tools that he has, it's going to cost you the 9 pick, or it's going to cost you your 9 at best. He might even go somewhere before that. So I don't want Willis at 9. I don't. I really don't. I'm almost on board right now with Desmond Ridder if you can get him after 50. I'd prefer one of those guys 50 to 75 than right now Malik Willis at 9. What I came away with at Senior Bowl was I don't want any of these guys in the top 10. That was my big impression. Now, if I had my pick and it, cost notwithstanding, Willis would be my first choice at quarterback. Maybe Matt Corral. I need to see more of him. It's unfortunate that the guy who maybe improved his stock the most did so by sitting out. That's a poor indictment of this class. So I like Willis, don't get me wrong, but he's going to need a year at least. You can put some packages in for him because of his mobility and all of those type of things. You can put some packages in for him where he should be able to get his feet wet, but you don't want him as your starting quarterback. For all the talk about him down there, he threw for 11 yards. He's like 2 of 5 for 11 yards. Now watch this. There's a 20-knot wind in his face. Him and Hal get rid of the ball about the same time.
Yeah, zip.
With a 20-mile-an-hour wind in his face. That was the first day, and I'm watching this. I said, Malik Willis is the only one there that's got the arm to throw the ball through this wind. His highlight plays were the best throws there. His low light plays were the worst throw there. So he's inconsistent. He's going to need some time. Toolsy for sure. Love his mobility, but at 9, he scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, he's definitely an intriguing guy. I mean, there's a lot to like about him. Broncos, once again, with a top 10 pick. I don't think you can ever be sure when you're drafting a player in the first round, with very few exceptions, especially at quarterback. How sure can you be? How warm and fuzzy can you get? You'd have to be, Scott, pretty dang confident at least
and
in your warm and fuzzies to take him.
People are talking about, this is a bad draft. This is a bad draft. No, it's not. It might be you're not going to have your guys at the top 5 that are, that you think of as like, okay, this Trevor Lawrence to me looks like, a future Pro Bowler for sure. There's questions marks next to anybody, but this draft goes deeper. When I look at guys, I can name 25, 30 guys that I feel good about in the first round. I see a lot of guys that are projected second round that I really, really like. So if you get Malik Willis at 9, it means you passed on a guy that can come in and help you right away at right tackle. Mm-hmm. It passed on a guy that you can come in and help you at corner. You passed on a guy that can come in right away and help you at edge. I don't know that I want that for this team right now, Chad.
Mm-hmm. See, I mean, plays like that where it breaks down and you got to go off schedule. He's really interesting because he's just that twitched up, explosive athlete.
You love that, Chad, but that's his second read.
Right.
He drops back, first read's covered, his second read is tuck and run. And that doesn't play in the NFL. And that takes and he's relatively new to the position. He didn't grow up playing quarterback from 7 years old and he's been throwing in camp. So there is dynamic upside here. But how patient are you going to be with your first round pick in a window when you think we've got a roster that's ready right now?
Make sure, guys, that you are subscribed to Scott's YouTube channel because all these clips that he picked up from the Senior Bowl are there. Andrew Baker has been a patient boy. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, all right, priests and the high priest. Oh, you're a sweet prince. Last Thursday, game prediction. I guess it would be the last Thursday game prediction of the season. Who you got in the Super Bowl? I'll tell you, I want the Bengals, and I know there's the Vaughn element. So some people are going, dadgummit, no, we want Vaughn. But I just love the underdog story and seeing what they did, what they overcame just to get to the playoffs and then running the gauntlet, dude, from the wild card, beating Mahomes in his own house. I'm hoping for a Joe Burrow victory. Now, will it happen? I actually think it's going to happen. I think these freaking Bengals, there's something magical about this team. I think they're going to win in LA's home stadium in the Super Bowl. Do I have a score? No, but there's just something tells me there's some magic about this team, Scott. I don't know. What do you think?
I saw the Rams struggle with the 49ers, and the 49ers and Bengals are very, very similar with what they do on defense, and Cincinnati's better on offense. I told Falling Sloth I would not. He's a Cincinnati guy. I would not, since I picked against the Bengals in every game except maybe Tennessee. That one goes back far enough. I liked their chance against Tennessee. I wasn't sold on Tennessee.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't keep picking. But I'm a Matthew Stafford fan. I think he's been criminally underrated.
Agreed.
And since I've been saying that for a decade, I want him to win one. I do. Like I said, who I root
That
for, I
would
root
be
for
cool.
me.
Yeah,
You know,
this
so-
is this is one of those Super Bowls where I'm not going to cry either way. Like
Yeah.
it's not like you got Tom Brady bringing home number 8 and you're
enough at Tom Brady.
Either way, there's some really great triumphant
Mm-hmm.
storylines, no matter which way this thing shakes out. Salvi Nation in the house. Thank you, big dog. We are judging D lineman or Drew Lock. Pardon, I see DL and I think D line. We're judging Drew for his past seasons when the OCs have been responsible for their horrible seasons, the Broncos' horrible season. Locke has never had a true OC to help him develop as a good quarterback. He had one as a rookie, and I really was intrigued to see where that could have gone with Skangs, but Vic didn't want to suffer through the growing pains of a young quarterback and a young OC, young relative to his experience in the league. And so he pulled the plug because, you know, the Scangarello hire, Scott, you weren't covering the team in any way, shape, or form back then. He was kind of foisted on Fangio. That was an Elway thing. Elway went to the Niners and said, please let us take him. They were first rebuffed. The Niners wouldn't even let him talk to Skangs. And then back channels with John Lynch, 2 Stanford boys and all this stuff. They eventually got to interview him and offered him the gig. And Fangio kind of just went along with it because, hey, you know, okay, you're my boss. First chance he got, cut him out, and that was that for Pat Shurmur. Now, if Pat Shurmur, Scott, doesn't get let go by the Giants, that timing-wise, probably Vic sticks with Rich Scangarello, but that temptation was there.
Yeah, the problem here that I have with this assumption is that having a good offensive coordinator automatically makes Drew Lock a better quarterback. It makes him better, but it doesn't necessarily make him, you know, what we've seen. Yeah, he's had these limitations. He's had these problems. He's had the COVID. He's had new offensive coordinators. He's had all that stuff. I get it, but we haven't seen him do it. And until we see him do it, I can't assume that he's going to. So again, having Nathaniel Hackett is the best thing that could happen for Drew Lock. It is. If he makes that progress, we'll know he was being hampered for sure. If he doesn't, the conversation about Drew Lock is done.
It's
It's
true.
done.
That's
so
true.
We'll find out.
All will be known in due time. Lawrence Rivera says, I really hope Peyton pulls this off. It's literally his team now. I just find myself constantly shaking my head on these decisions. Hopefully I'm wrong and can eat crow because he's lining up something big. But if he can't make it exciting again, it's going to be another hard season for everyone. Look, I think the Nathaniel Hackett hire is going to raise all ships, but it can only go so far if you don't solve the quarterback situation. And like we've been talking about, it's a long shot, but solving it could be Hackett finds a way to connect with Drew, help him with his processing issues, and elevates him. And it's no longer, it's a moot point. They have their quarterback for a long time, or they go out and find somebody, but they got to get a quarterback. They have to improve the most important position on the field, which has, outside of the, you know, coaching carousel post Gary Kubiak stepping down, has been the biggest single hindrance to this team being stuck in the mud post Super Bowl 50. No quarterback.
And Lawrence, always a big supporter of the show, coming on with big stars on that question. Appreciate that. Yeah, you know, we talked a little bit about this last year, and you moved up to, is this a playoff team if you get average quarterback play? Now, if you look at the ratings and everything, Teddy Bridgewater was about average. I don't think everybody realizes just how bad some of the quarterbacks are in this league. That, you know, Teddy Bridgewater was okay. Excuse me. But then you run into all these injuries. This team wasn't good enough to lose Von Miller. I'm just talking about losses and injuries.
Yeah.
To lose Bradley Chubb, to lose 2 sets of inside linebackers. You know, you lose a corner out of the gate, a couple backup corners. So the injuries on defense really played a toll. So when you're talking about looking at this roster, you think the defense is good enough for this to be a playoff team if everybody stays healthy and you get average quarterback play. I think you got, believe it or not, average quarterback play across the season, but the injuries, good Lord.
Yeah.
So yes, we want better quarterback play. We don't want just meh. We want good quarterback play because injuries happen. You know, injuries do happen. And this will help keep us from being so, you know, a couple injuries here and there to the defense, and all of a sudden our season's over because we can't score.
Yeah.
Well, let's get some quarterback play. Let's do it. And if it's Drew Lock, great. If it's somebody else, we'll see. I've been an advocate for, saying yes, if you can go get Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, there are no guarantees. Going back to Salvi, and about Drew Lock with his super, appreciate that for sure. Saying he hasn't really had a chance based on the circumstances. That well could be true, but there's no guarantee either. The closest thing you can get to a guarantee right now is one of those veteran quarterbacks that we've been talking about.
Yep. Edward, appreciate the super, my friend. He says he's ready for the draft, wants to come back on the show. Yeah, we'll have you back on, dude. I'm lining things out. We'll get it figured out. I'll be in touch. Yes, absolutely, Albert. Demarcus Ware is going to the Hall of Fame. I think he'll be one of the inductees this year. I don't know how closely you follow that, Scott, but is there anything you could see keeping Demarcus Ware from the Hall of Fame this year as a first time ballot?
I'd have to see all his numbers, but I know he was an absolute nightmare for two different teams. So it makes sense to me.
Demarcus Ware, real quick. Let's just celebrate because he's a Bronco, 14, 15, 16, not quite enough years to get in the ring, but if he had one more season, he would have been Ring of Fame. He's top 10 all-time NFL with 138.5 sacks, and he twice led the league in sacks, which Vaughn, by the way, has never done. Has had double-digit sacks 8 different seasons, and then, of course, he got to hoist the Lombardi as a Bronco. So I don't think there's anything keeping him out. I think it's going to be him, Holt, Richard Seymour. Those are the 3 I think for sure getting in this time around. But Gabriel Martinez, appreciate you, buddy. What's up, fellas? Things are getting exciting. It's a breath of fresh air. Man, it's almost felt like the one constant that you've got for Broncos fans post Super Bowl 50 is just change. Every year it's something. But this time it just feels good. It feels different. Maybe it's because they're going from you got Peyton as the GM, Scott, and you're going from 2 defensive guys, neither of whom were any good with the media, to a funny, dynamic, offensive-minded guy with some Aaron Rodgers bona fides.
Well, it's almost like what's worse than being bad is being bad and boring.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got to be where it wasn't fun. I've used this analogy a lot of times, talking about it shouldn't be, everything always seems so hard. And thanks for the super, Gabriel. That feels like a new name to me. So
it does. Yeah,
welcome to the show. Everything was so hard. You'd go and you'd have to get points. You'd have to have these 15 play drives and sustain it. Well, you're not good enough on offense to do that. There was no big plays. Maybe we can keep the guys down, but I've kind of said they played not to lose on offense. They played not to lose on defense. Well, who's going to win? How are you going to win any games like that?
Clayton wants to know who's the MVP. Aaron Rodgers seems to think he's the MVP. One of the other news items, Scott, that came out of his golf tournament yesterday was he was announced as a 3-time MVP, and although he didn't say anything, when it happened, he went like this. 4. He flashed the number 4 for those of you listening after the fact.
When you reach that age, it's one of the nice things about getting older is you care a little bit less about what people think about you. You're like, as long as my kids love me, I'm okay with everything else.
Yep.
I'm okay with everything else. So you got $250 million in the bank and you're 39 and a couple MVPs. You can speak your mind a little bit more. And Aaron Rodgers, God bless him. He's got some personality. I get tired of the robots. That won't say anything. And Phil coming in with some stars. Thank you so much. And Travis Starbucks coming in with some stars. Saying Scott's spitting facts here. I'm like, okay, which one? I'm like, yeah, that one. We can all agree on that one. Nothing against Tom Brady, but
he's the GOAT.
I'm ready for somebody. I'm ready for somebody else. I'm rooting against him pretty much every time he takes on the field. He's won everything there is to win. We get it. You got it. Get out.
It's the same principle, Scott. You and I are pretty close in generation. We're only a couple of years off. So we are in the same generation, Scott and I. We're Gen Xers. And I don't know how you felt about this, but like in the 90s with Jordan, I was ready for him to retire. Before he retired, I'm like, all right, dude, you own the NBA. It's clear you're the greatest of all time. Go away. But in retrospect, when I look back, like when the pandemic hit, and we got to watch The Last Dance on ESPN Plus or whatever, it was so fun to go back and watch that and just appreciate that greatness in retrospect, right? To go back and look at just that rare feats and achievements that he was able to accomplish. And even Tom Brady, who I just find to be ridiculous in terms of just get off my lawn, dude. 22 years in the league. Come on, bro. 7 rings. Is it 7? Shoot. I've lost count. Okay. I've lost count. But even already when he did officially announce retirement, all right, I'm going to out myself a little bit here. I went and watched a couple of quick little 5-minute YouTubes on some of his career highlights and just kind of appreciating how great he was, which he was, man. He was, look, in my heart, Elway's the GOAT, but if you look at it in terms of the rings and staying power and consistent, outside of the year that Tom tore his ACL in Kansas City, guaranteed playoff berth if you're the New England Patriots or Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's to say nothing, Scott, of all his rings. So he's the GOAT. The time had come. Thank the football gods. He's finally deciding to hang it up so the torch can be passed to this next generation.
Yeah, I felt like I was a little different with Jordan because it seemed to me like they were, except for the one year where they were like, all right, I've got something to prove, and they won 72 games. It almost felt like they were underdogs a lot. It really did. The Phoenix Suns with Barkley, they won like 63 games, and it's like, okay, I don't know. I enjoyed watching them for some reason, and but the dynasties can be a good thing. Now, when Kobe and Shaq, maybe it's because I like Michael Jordan. I was not a Kobe fan at all. Watching him play basketball actually angered me that they were so dominant. I was like, I quit watching. I'm like, okay, let me know when someone is beating the Lakers and I can start watching basketball again.
Right.
But they were so dominant. But with Brady, like I said, enough's enough. Enough's enough. Kevin Vinn coming in saying, what are adjustment you want to see on the D-line? Through playoffs, good 4-man pass rush, Reed and Chubb average, and Purcell just not the same since injury. Yeah, if you can get in, I apologize for saying it, but, the 98 Falcons team that went into Minnesota that y'all played in the playoffs, and they were 14-2. They were a really, really good team, but everybody was talking about that offense with Moss and Carter and Culpepper, the 15-1 Vikings. But I was like, The Falcons can beat this team because they have a 4-man rush. They can get pressure on Culpepper with 4 guys. Now, they're
Cunningham.
Oh, it was Cunningham, not Culpepper. That's right. Sorry.
But anyway, the point remains.
But they could get pressure on them, and that's going to make them dangerous. I've been a firm believer in the defensive line ever since. Blitzes are fun, all that kind of stuff. But if you can scheme a man free, it doesn't matter who you have running, blitzing. But if I can get pressure on you with 4 guys, I'm going to be a dangerous defense, very dangerous defense. And that's why Cincinnati's winning. That's one of the reasons they're winning. They're getting pressure on Mahomes with 3 guys.
Yeah. That was a key. And you're right about, Kevin, you're right about Purcell. He wasn't the same after his Lisfranc injury that cost him most of the 2020 campaign. So the Broncos need upgrades on the edge. All right. They need upgrades right in the middle pivot. They need a true nose tackle that's not going to always be trying to get upfield, a guy that's savvy enough to kind of see which way the wind's blowing and clog those lanes, baby. Like Purcell, God bless him, but he's so aggressive and he's always trying to shoot the gap. And oftentimes that would leave the backside or the linebackers freaking hung out to dry. And so, you need upgrades. As I couldn't have said it better than what Scott did, but you also need to get that pivot. You need to get that nose tackle back in the saddle. 727 mil. And by the way, Scott, as we approach the 50-minute mark, we got a really rapid fire because I got to keep it pretty tight to 60 tonight. I got some things cooking with one of my kids. 727 mil. Love you, big dog. I don't want to keep Josie Jewell. I'd rather have Alexander Johnson, which I understand. Like if you're just looking at explosive playmaking ability, especially in the run game, I understand why AJ pops out. But what I value in Josie's, I don't think their production, Scott, in that department is really all that big of a gap. And AJ or Josie just brings so much more on the intangible side of things, both as a leader and just as, as kind of a defensive captain, that I think he's just a little bit more valuable.
And George, thank you for the stars as well. And 727, getting back to yours. I get it. I actually thought Jewell was playing better than Alexander Johnson before he got hurt. When I came in here, as a blank slate to watch his team, I've heard hearing the discussions about Jewell. Hadn't watched him. He's blue collar guy, soup to nuts. He can do a job. And then I watched him start playing, and I'm seeing him go sideline to sideline, making plays. I'm like, this guy, I think he's better than you're giving him credit for. He's moving really well laterally. He's protecting the edge on sweeps, screens, et cetera, et cetera. That I think that was a big miss for sure. Got to watch out for where Ed Donatel ends up, if he ends up there eventually. I think that's his boy. I really do. He talked well about him all season, talking about that all the work that he did with the team and how special he is. And when you go and you take a new job, you want to surround yourself with people you can trust, and you can trust to have some influence on the other people. So keep an eye on Ed Donatel.
Ed Donatel getting hired by the Vikings. It sounds like a deal's in place there. And you know what's ironic about that, Scott? Vic Fangio, when his job security was beginning to be questioned down the stretch, right, as the Broncos kept losing. We know which way this is going, Vic. You were in a do or die situation. Are you starting to worry about your job security? And he threw out, a kind of flippant kind of, hey, you know what? I can't worry about that. If I am fired, I'll have a job within 5 minutes. So it's a little bit ironic that Ed Donatel gets a paid gig as a defense coordinator before his boss, Vic Fangio. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really making a comment on that, but I think it's ironic at the very least. Nathan, watch Tom Brady highlights versus Denver in the playoffs. You'll feel a lot better.
I think if it was a race, Vic Fangio would have had a job as quickly as he wanted one. Vic Fangio doesn't need a job as quickly as he needs one. He's got plenty of money, and I think he can be a little more selective of where he wants to be. So I know that's it's kind of fun punching down on Vic Fangio right now, but if he wanted a job the next day, I think he probably could have made some phone calls for some open defensive coordinators and taken the first one that was offered.
But it makes you wonder what he's looking for, Scott.
Sit back and I'll sit out a year if I need to.
What do you think Vic's looking for? I mean, because you're right, and he's been sniffed by a lot of different teams have talked to him. What's he holding out for? Do you think it's money? Because I don't.
No, it's not money. It's where am I going to have the best chance to win? Where am I going to feel valued? And where am I going to have the most autonomy?
Mm-hmm. Hey, Nathan, thanks for that, buddy. And Travis Weber, I know you got to sign off, so we'll see you on Sunday. Steve Armstrong, thank you, big dog. I feel whomever is under center could help motivate the fan base. I remember sold out season. Let's see what happens in the draft and free agency. Hashtag state of being. Don't ever F with Broncos country and the Mile Highlander. I love that, dude. We'll see what happens in the draft and free agency. I mean, again, Broncos need an upgrade, Scott, at quarterback. And if that's an outside guy coming in, so be it. If that's Nathaniel Hackett pulling blood out of the stone with Drew Lock, so be it. But it has to happen for this team to move the needle.
There is absolutely no way we will not see. That's a lot of negatives, I know. So make sure I got them all in the right order. We're going to see more explosive plays next year. I promise you. It's almost impossible not to. Literally.
Yeah.
He's going to take chances. He's going to throw the ball downfield. And that will play into the strengths of Drew Lock if Drew Lock's a quarterback. If he's not, it doesn't matter. We're not going to see the dink and dunk that we saw last year. And part of that by design. Part of it's through limitations of who's a quarterback. Part of it's by design. That's done. I don't want don't lose me this game offense anymore.
Right. Yeah.
When you're not taking the ball away. If I've got the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl team, if I've got Derek Brooks and John that was John Lynch, wasn't it? That was for the Buccaneers.
Yeah,
and I've got the Buccaneers of Warren Sapp.
Simeon Rice.
Defense, okay. But if I've got a good bend but don't break defense that can hold you down and smother you, I still need some points. Again, I've said it before. Today. Your offense played not to lose. Your defense played not to lose. Well, where are your winners? Where are your winners out there?
It's a losing philosophy, and it always blows up in that team's face that employs it. But guys, we're going to dip on out of here. So thank you so much for spending about an hour with us, including you, Michael. We love you. We appreciate you. Make sure you're following the podcast on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod, and also head on over to Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod, and give that page a follow. Big plans for that. Also, guys, check out the merch store. You can get Huddle Up Podcast gear, MHH gear, Broncos for Breakfast gear, a little something for everybody. Go check that out. HuddleUpPod, .com. And then also, guys, go leave your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts under the Huddle Up Podcast and enter in for a chance to win a little thank you gift, a little swag from MHH at the end of the month. It helps out a lot. Take some time, even if you mostly or only listen to the show or watch the show on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. Take a second. I mean, I see the analytics on Google. All right. I publish a very big website. I see that most people are using Apple. Go take a second, open up Apple Podcasts on your phone. Go give us a 5-star review. We appreciate that.
Yeah, not just on Apple Mobile too.
Yep.
You're on your phone already.
It's a small thing you can do to help us out in a big bad way. Plus, hey, throws you your hat in the ring for a little bit of swag. And then one last thing here, Scott, and then we'll get out of here. I just want to shout out and let everyone know how they finished on Facebook. If this page would want to play ball with me here. And there we go. We got Lawrence Rivera at the top, Joshua Mize, Andrew Baker, Lana, Travis Tarbox, Gary Leeds Palmer, a.k.a. GLP, Michael Ronquillo, Travis Weber, Phil McLaughlin, and George Fox. Appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll see you on Sunday. Well, I'll be doing Broncos Book Club on Saturday around noon. But and then we'll see for the Huddle Up Pod on Sunday.
And thanks, Karen. Karen says she's just coming in, just getting here and scope out the replay. Thanks as always. Hit us up in questions on you're on YouTube already. Hit us up in questions. I like going through there and I read through the comments. And if there's anything you need me to clarify or anything, the written word is nice to be able to clarify what you happen to say live that you might not have quite been very clear on. I will see you tomorrow night. I'll be behind the scenes on the chat on Dove Valley Deep Diver. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 6:00.
Yep.
Mountain time.
And Scott, thanks for peeling off 2 hours in back-to-back nights to step in for Zach, who's licking his wounds. He'll be back in the saddle on Sunday, guys. Don't worry. Appreciate that, my friend. And it's been fun finally getting to break the ice, just you and I, getting at it, arguing about Drew Lock, arguing about George Payton's implications and what his remarks mean and all that. But it's been a lot of fun, bro.
Absolutely. Again, it's always a good time. Always a good time. I'm never going to tell you I'm right. I'll just tell you what I think.
Shout out to the great Super Chat superstars like Bryce, Kevin, Casey, Terry, Salvi, Edward, Gabriel, 727 Mill, Nathan, Steve Armstrong. We love you. We'll see you. For Scott, I'm Chad. For Zach, he'll be back Sunday. This is the Huddle Up Podcast on Mile High Huddle. Much love and respect. We'll see you on Sunday.